All right, Mr. Chris Tuff, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, my brother. I am super excited to connect.
I'm just as excited to be here, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a fun one. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're a speaker, but you're a happy hustler. True and true. Like we connected offline last week, I think it was, and we were just cut from the same cloth. Two bros, just out there doing our best to make a positive impact on this planet. And I know you're a big surfer, an adventurer, outdoorsman, family man. But besides all those things, Chris, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
So I'm an identical twin, married to an identical twin. And
What?
yeah, so when I was set up with my wife, I that's why we were set up because we're both identical twins. She was a pro athlete, she was a pro soccer player, and her friend was like, "Oh, you got to meet this other identical twin that I know," and the rest was history. Yeah, so that and it's cool because like you have enough when you grow up with someone exactly like you for the first 18 years of your life, that makes a profound impact on you, and to have someone else that you can relate to in that same way, like it creates enough of a similarity for us that even though we're pretty much polar opposites, it keeps us in line. So yeah, that's probably it.
That's super interesting. I mean, I'm curious, what's your wife's name? Because I love soccer. I played my whole life.
Just Julie Augustiniak was her name, and how I actually sold her, I was like, my last name's Tough. Like Augustiniak doesn't even fit on the back of your jersey. It like goes off the sleeve. It's so long. Tough is so marketable, and it was actually kind of cool for her final pro. So the Augustiniak twins, they're kind of in and out of the National League, and they're part of the Brandy Chastain era,
Oh,
and
cool.
it was actually so she did go out the last game with Tough on the back of her jersey, but this past fall she went to Clemson and she was inducted into the Clemson Hall of Fame in front of 100,000 people at halftime with our 10-year-old and 12-year-old daughters, and they're like, "Mom," as she's in the middle of the field, like waving, getting inducted. They're like, "Mom, you're kind of a big deal." She's like, "Yeah,
I
totally."
love it. That is amazing, man. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about assholes. I want to kick
Yeah.
things off with the bang. And this phrase that you created is truly remarkable because it really does sum up what these individuals are. I get hit up all the time by assholes. They're wanting, to pick my brain most commonly. And
Yeah.
I know you do too as well. And I'm curious, how'd you come up with this phrase, assholes, and define them for us, if you would?
Sure. So, I mean, the catalyst for Savior Asks was the pandemic hit. I had written a very successful book around work culture and connection and millennials and how to use them as the catalyst for organization versus, they expose a lot of the problems versus being the problems. And I thought long and hard about, all right, what if I was to write one book? What is the thing that everyone goes to me for advice on? And I thought back to I went to Vanderbilt for my undergrad and I'd done what was rated, now this was 5 years prior, it was the highest rated guest lecture of the year. And the title of that guest lecture was How to Network Like a Mofo. I was like, I think that's the one, that's the book that I should write. Meanwhile, I am on the recipient end of people going in for asks way too early, right? What if I could actually create a book that not only helps people better network and sell, but also create more genuine connection in the process? And let's make it a call to action for people to save their asks. Because the reality is, and what I teach people is, you only get one ask in anyone around you, right? And as an author, you know this, like, do I want my ask to be an endorsement for my book from my influential friends, or to rate my book, or even to buy it? I'm going to save my ask for all of that because I only get one ask in everyone. And if I could reorient people's mentality around that, that'll be a profound impact. Meanwhile, once again, we are surrounded by assholes, right?
Yeah.
And that asshole, those are the energy takers. Those are the ones that are going, "Hey, Chris, I need tickets to the Braves game." And then the next week, they're like, "Oh, by the way, hey, can you connect me with this person?" Right? So many people are going in for the asks way too early and often in relationships.
Yep.
And if more of us actually just went into just like we did, right? Like we met last week and
Yeah.
my only intention was genuine connection. Like that
Yep.
was desired outcome. It wasn't to get on your
Same.
big podcast, right?
Yeah.
And here we are. And when we end up saving our asks and we go in with that when being genuine connection, you end up undoing the ask hole nature of where we all live. And in the book, I talk about the ask continuum because if I talk about my own story, I crushed it in sales for my agency, right? Like I could open up almost any door and I was almost too much of I was an asshole. So I'm kind of a recovering asshole that went way too far to the other side. And the other side is you're a people pleaser and you usually will let the ask pass you by. And so regardless of where we are in that ask continuum, if asks come really easy to us, we're most likely an asshole, right? If they don't, if you're on the other side of that, where you let the asks pass you by, we've got to actually figure out when is it that we should go in for that ask, and then and how can we be more effective at doing that. And so, you know, my tactic for those people that are on, so those listening, if you're one of those people that that ask is really hard for you to go in and say, I need this or whatever. I have this tactic, and it's actually what really got me connected with all of the stories of these amazing billionaires and pro surfers and whatever. I would end my Zoom interview with these people and I say, okay, listen, I'm going to practice one of my favorite tactics on you. And it's one of the world's best networkers. I know you're sensitive to this. Are you ready? And in this case, it was a guy named Jason Trotwine. And Jason is a serial entrepreneur out of Austin, Texas. And he goes, yeah, bring it on, Chris, right? And so after that, I ended up, I go, okay, it's called masking your ask in your dream. And it is my dream to create a handbook that makes you a better networker and seller. But whether you just graduated from college or you're a 50-year-old salesperson trying to live a more fulfilling life, I want to help make that happen for those people. Who in your network do I have to talk to? And he lights up and he was like, dude, you got to talk to Raymana. I was like, Raymana? Who's Raymana? He goes, well, Raymana is Kelly Slater's right-hand guy at Surf Ranch. And he's this big Tahitian dude in his late 40s. And he can get anyone up on a wave there. And it was 6 minutes into our relationship 7 years ago that Raymana, I'd never met him before. He was telling me how to catch this wave. He turned around from the jet ski. He put his hand on my heart and he looked into my eyes. He said, I love you, brother. Now just breathe, just breathe. And I caught the most epic wave at Kelly's Surf Ranch ever. And so you should talk to him because he's the greatest connector of billionaires in the world. And I was like, okay, I'd seen Raymana and Kelly's like Instagram posts and whatever. And 24 hours later, I get a Zoom call from Raymana. And Raymana, I'm like, dude, Raymana, I was kind of starstruck because I'd heard of this guy and whatever. I could see like the Tahitian like background, like in his like little, you know, epic little surf spot right at Chopu. I was like, I'm stuck in my house in Atlanta. Can I live vicariously through you? Before we even get going, tell me about your day. Have you been surfing today? He was like, brother man, yeah, I just got off Sergey Brin's yacht. I was teaching his wife how to surf. Wonderful lady, pretty good surfer. Now here I am with you. I was like, holy crap, this guy's truly the greatest connector of billionaires in the world. And I go, okay, my second question, Raymana, is tell me about this relationship and bond you have with Jason. Because he says you guys have a bond that's like deeper than anyone he's ever met. And it comes down to this moment 7 minutes into your relationship where you put your hand on his heart. You looked into his eyes. You said, I love you, brother. Now just breathe. Tell me about that. He goes, yes. Now don't tell Jason this. But I tell that to everyone when I'm teaching them how to get this wave. And I mean two things by it. One, take in this moment, right? Forget about your big job. It's kind of what you do with your retreats. Forget about your big job and whatever. Like take it in, be present. Yep. Secondly, this is the best, most epic wave that you might miss in your life. You don't want to miss this. And it's going to be a bummer. So I want you to hear, I love you, brother. I was like, dude, that's amazing. And so I start my speeches actually with that we all need to be a little bit more like Raymana and less like the assholes.
Yeah, man. I love that. And you know, one thing that you said that really resonates is there's two sides of the spectrum. Like you have the assholes and then you have the people pleasers. And you have to really identify all the happy hustlers out there right now listening and watching, where you fit on this spectrum. And I mean, I know, just doing a little self-reflection, I've been an asshole for sure. Because I have no problem going up and asking for what I want. And I always like to, I always like to say, ask for forgiveness rather than approval. And so I tend to do that as my main ask, like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. But I do think there's something to be said about finding that balance, right? And between both of these different spectrums. How do you manage that? What is the right time to go for the ask?
So I say, I'm on the far left side of the continuum, where I will actually do 30 gives before I even go for an ask. And I call it my bank of asks. All right. And there are seasons to asks in your life, and then there are seasons of giving. Most of your life should be seasons of giving. All right. And if you're questioning, anyone listening out there, if you're questioning whether or not you are an asshole, ask your friends and just be like, listen, I want to lay it out there for you. Right. But it's amazing once you actually have that radar on, and I'm so attuned to it. And it's nice because people all day, every day they go in for the asks too early, and I just send them a link to my Audible or my book. And I'm like, I think this is going to help you because you're kind of an asshole. You're going in for, just do a little bit of research before you reach out to people, right? But I think that to me is asking those people around you where it is that they think you fall. But also, for my general strategy is, especially as entrepreneurs, we're going to have those periods where our sacrifice, we're going to be sacrificing more. We're going to be in a building zone. That is the season of asking. And so you dip into those bank of asks that you've created through a life of giving to then actually redeem that one ask from those people. And now there is an art to the ask, right? There's a limited window that you have to capitalize on that. And that's why also, tactically speaking, my favorite way to actually get that ask done is when you orient it around your dream, you will have a 97% success rate. And because as human beings, people will do anything in their power to help someone else achieve their dream.
Yeah.
And if that seems too far for you, right? Like some people are like, well, that's not, like, selling insurance is not my dream. And I'm like, all right, so then we've got to look long and hard at what it is that we're doing, right? And we can get into some of those other pieces around the role of the side hustle. But yeah, that's kind of my approach, because most people are assholes. That's the truth of the matter. And that's actually the title of my keynote that I've been giving is, Am I an Asshole? And one common theme that I think you'll both acknowledge and appreciate is, with these networkers that I'm talking to the world's greatest networkers. The ones that are, one example was, he was introduced to me as a guy that was watching the Super Bowl, and he recognized that he specialized in billionaires. And he recognized that both the owners, which at the time was Robert Kraft and someone else, he hadn't gotten meetings with them. By the time the Super Bowl was finished, he had set up meetings with both of them. I was like, I got to meet this guy. This guy's name is Aaron Abrams. And so I go on he actually flew down, we met in person. And one thing he brought up that a lot of other people also brought up was this concept that creating relationships is easy. Sustaining them is what is so difficult.
Yeah. And
so in my speech, I have an amazing speaking coach, and he was like, Chris, you need some sort of call to action. And it can either be symbolic, right? Like, I've got these Everest climbers, and they'll actually tie a piece of thread around the person next to them as they commit to these things, much like the Sherpas do on Everest. That's the symbolic one. Or you could do something literal. And I was like, I know what my literal one is, and I'm going to challenge everyone listening right now to do this.
Let's do it.
And I do it with 20 minutes left in the speech, and I say, think of the first person that comes to mind that's not friends or family who you've lost touch with. Go and send them a video text message telling them that you're thinking about them, or that you're grateful for that thing they did or whatever it is, right? Just reach out to them in the moment and send them a video text message.
Yep.
And what's amazing is in those 20 minutes, so I give them like, a minute to do it. I take a sip of water and I revisit that same question at the end of my speech. I say, okay, out of a raise of hands, I want you to raise your hand if you've heard back from that person. And it's always 20% of the audience has already heard back with huge smiles on their face. I'm like, how awesome is that? And for those people that have not heard, just know that you probably, if nothing else, made someone, grateful and excited that you reached out. You were thinking about them.
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard back, it also might be a sign that you're an asshole and they're scared about what it is that you're going to be wanting to get from them. Right. And so what I do as I'm creating these relationships is that I will actually send video instead of just text messages. I will send video text messages at least every week as I'm developing these genuine connections with these leaders or entrepreneurs. And it's amazing what ends up happening with that.
Oh yeah. And just to your point, like, this is so funny. I did 4 video text messages all over a minute yesterday, just to 4 of my inner circle friends, who like are just really good people. I was shooting my bow. I don't know if you know Garrett Gunderson.
Yeah.
Garrett, I sent him, I was like, I was thinking of you, shooting my bow, and like, and now him and I were doing, a collab on something. It's like really that's such a differentiating factor. I know you can use a tool like BombBomb and a couple other things like Loom if you want to do it on your desktop, but this is something all the happy hustlers out there, if you really want to differentiate yourself but also add that warm touch, you have to get video involved, because I think it's like 90, no, I don't want to butcher this, but it's like 72% of all communication is nonverbal, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to see someone in order to have the rest of that communication. And oftentimes through text message, your tonality can get misconstrued, right? And same thing with email. Email is even worse than text, I feel like, because if you throw an emoji in an email, it's like, is that an eggplant? What is that?
Totally.
No, but it's definitely a really great takeaway. Like, I urge everyone out there listening to send a video message right now to someone not in your friends or family that you have lost touch with, and just offer to add value. Like, say, hey, I'm thinking of you, be grateful, for your connection, and sustain that relationship. I think that's really gold right there.
And the second that someone comes to mind, all right, let me just use an example. I was watching White Lotus, which was, it's hilarious, right? Such a good series on HBO. I think it's on HBO. Yeah. And it's based in Hawaii. And I thought of this pretty well-known entrepreneur that had just moved to Hawaii, whose name is Michael. And after watching it, I was like, I'm going to text message him a video text message. And I'm like, dude, Michael, I was just watching White Lotus. I don't know if you've seen it, but it makes me want to go to Hawaii right now. How's it going? And sure enough, he responds back almost immediately. And he goes, Chris, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about you. By the way, I just bought this new company. I want you to come in, do the keynote, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we make it so complicated, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times the complications it's all happening in our own heads, right? And when we don't feel like we have that green light, we don't go there. And the more practice, the more you build this muscle, the more often you'll go there and also reap the rewards, both financially, business-wise, but also from a fulfillment standpoint, because you're connecting and it's genuine, because you're going into it without wanting to just get something out of someone else. And because business is a byproduct of relationships. And that's really, the Savior Asks, the book that I spent 2.5 years putting together, it's not that complicated, and it is a call to action, right? It's just, we got to start going for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, I also resonate with business being a byproduct of relationships. And really what it comes down to when you take business, this is my buddy Wade T. Lightheart, founder of BiOptimizer, he says, business is solving people's problems at a profit, and so when you're solving people's problems, typically it's a person on the other end, which is a relationship, which is how you achieve profit by actually doing something good for them or helping them, overcome adversity. And it's really, getting to the basis of what the happy hustle is all about, really just putting the happy in your everyday hustle, helping other people achieve their success, making a
Mm,
positive impact, the passion, the purpose, and the positive impact, right? And one of my digital mentors, Zig Ziglar,
yeah.
I never met him, but I know his son Tom.
Yeah.
He talks about, you can have anything in this life if you just help enough other people get what they want in this life. And it's like, yeah, it's so true. If you save your asks, like Chris is talking about, and you actually come with like that giving heart, that giving mind, and then when it is time to ask, mask your ask in your dream.
Yes.
That's the gold right here
A
that I
hundred
want to
percent.
stay with one more, beat, because I really do think, like, eventually you don't want to pass that opportunity goodbye. Like, you don't want it to just be a regret. And I've had that a couple of times. Maybe, you can resonate, some of the people out there who you see someone who's very attractive, right? And you're like, oh man, I want to go up and ask this person for like their name or number or just how they're doing. And then you regret it like heck if you don't do it. You know what I mean? That's just a simple, silly example, but you don't want to, let that moment pass you by. So when it is time to mask your ask in your dream, can you repeat that
Yeah.
verbiage for us?
Yeah. So, well, and it works two ways. Okay. One, if you're one of these people that lets the ask pass them by, masking your ask in your dream is the most effective way to go in with the ask in a genuine way where people will almost do anything. And so orienting that ask, whatever it is that you're trying to get, and putting it towards that ultimate dream of what it is that you're creating. When you do that, once again, you're going to be almost 100% successful in it. But it also works for how do you expand how can you double your business overnight? Go and do that same practice with your greatest advocates, right? Those people that you've done business with, and ask them for a referral, and go and mask your asking your dream. And so you set it out. And so, for me, I want to help change the world by bringing more genuine connection and allow people to save their asks, but for them to triple their sales in the process, by creating a handbook. And in my case, it was just getting introductions to other, super influential entrepreneurs and different leaders. And I said, I'm going to create that handbook. Who in your network do I have to talk to? Who practices this stuff that we just talked about? And you'll get a referral every single time, right? And here's another piece that I think is really easy to implement in saving your asks. And it's this concept of Shawshanking. Have you ever heard of
Mm.
this?
No, but I'm interested because I saw it on your notes and I was
Okay.
like, what the heck is
Okay.
Shawshanking?
So I closed in 2000. So I grew up in the digital and social media world. And there was a group of us. I worked directly with Mark Zuckerberg in 2006 and helped, some was good, some was really bad, and it backlashed in our face. But, there was a group of us that really helped build kind of the environment around Facebook. And there was 40 of us in this closed Facebook group. And it was 7 years later that I was sitting at a steak dinner with another person that was in that group after I'd signed the largest contract of my life and his life. I was the buyer, right? So he was the salesperson. I was the buyer. And I turned to him and I was like, the sales guy in me is just, his name's Jason Beckerman. And I said, Jason, the sales guy in me is just interested. How did we get here? I'm diagnosed ADHD. I'm impossible to pin down, yet here we are, right? And he goes, Chris, you really want to know? I was like, yeah. He goes, I Shawshanked your ass. I was like, Shawshank? What is that? Like Shawshank Redemption, the movie? He goes, yeah. If you remember in the movie, Andy Dufresne, he had that little tool that he used to slowly chip away outside until 10 years later outside of Shawshank prison. If you want to take it even more literally, for him to get the funding for the library at Shawshank prison, he wrote a letter a week, right? And at that letter a week, he didn't hear back, and it didn't stop. And it was 2 years later that he got his first check for like $100 or $200 to fund the library. But he didn't stop. He actually started writing 2 letters a week. And then finally, 10 years later, when he escaped, they had the nicest library in the whole prison system. So I like using it more like chipping away, right? But he goes, not once did I go in for an ask with you. And I Shawshanked you, right? So I've had a touch point. You haven't noticed it maybe, but I've had a touch point with you every single week for the last 7 years. It's been on Instagram message. It's been on LinkedIn. It's been on text. It's been on email. Not once have I gone in for an ask. But yet through that, we developed a relationship where you trust me enough to then give me a shot at this piece of business. And I said, dude, that changes the game for me, right? And I just gotten a call from the CMO of a Fortune 50 company, the Home Depot. I can disclose it.
Yeah.
And she wanted to hire me, and it was on LinkedIn. She wanted to hire me as her digital and social person. And it was super obnoxious in my reply to her. And I said, yeah, I'd love to work with you, ... as your agency partner. And I was like, that was so obnoxious. I need to Shawshank, right? So I got her cell phone and I called her and I said, Trish, listen, everyone's full of crap in the digital and social world right now. And let me just come down there and help you hire the right person. Once again, going in with the give, saving my ask, providing value, and I'll help you write the job description. And I go down there, we spend like an hour and a half whiteboarding and just hanging out. And it was about 3 weeks later, she's like, Chris, can you come do this merchant learning session for us and teach some of our merchants the power of Twitter and social? I was like, absolutely. And that continued. And it was 14 months later that we got our first project for the Home Depot for College Game Day. And today, that is our second largest account at our agency. We have 120 employees on it. Wow. And it's one of the best like these things, we get impatient, right? And we tend to gravitate towards that ask too early. And I probably, once again, will wait almost too long, right? But it's been successful to date and my sales cycles allow for it, that I will actually do 30 gives before I go in for an ask. And that's where the bank of asks kind of come up. But Shawshanking, wow. use it in your vernacular.
Yeah, Shawshanking. I mean, it's really, chipping away, being very intentional, keeping the touch points. There's something I talk about, and it's basically categorizing your inner circle. So I have, 5-minute friends. I'll see, oh, hey, what's up? I see you had a coffee, good to see you. I got, 5-hour friends or 5-minute friends where I'm like, okay, 5-minute friends, 5-hour friends where, like I could spend a day with them. 5-day friends where like I could go on a trip with them. 5-week friends where I know like they're going to, be there if I call them in a pinch. And then there's 5-year friends who are like my ride or dies, and it's like when you categorize your friends, and I do this, I'm actually looking to potentially create software around it for other entrepreneurs, because I think it's really important to categorize your inner circle. I actually have like I need to reach back out to this person. This is the time cycle of when I last touched with them. My assistant helps me manage it, but it's really being intentional about how you manage your connections. Reminds me of the Shawshanking.
Yes.
And really, I don't call myself a super connector. I was just on like LinkedIn and this guy's like, I'm a super connector. So I'd love to connect with you. And I get on a Zoom with him and he's like, he's got his list of questions. It was the most rehearsed crap I've ever seen. We had zero like depth to it. It was like, so what's your wife's name? What's your, like, it is just like, I was just like, I left with such a bad taste in my mouth. So people's BS meters are so high these days. You have to use EQ, emotional intelligence. You have to be, banking your asks, giving first. Like before any ask, I think you definitely should have a number of gives. I don't know how many the number is. 30 seems like a lot. Yeah. So, it's a little like, dang, good for you, Chris. That's good. Yeah. But like, totally. But I'm like, dang, that's a lot. And the thing too, when you are asking, frame it as an opportunity. And I think that goes back to, I love sales. I love the art of the deal. That's one of my strengths / superpowers, if you will, from what I've been told, is just helping to facilitate a transaction. And I think when you can frame the ask as an opportunity, that's where the magic happens. What's your take on that perspective?
I mean, I think it's right. I think it's right on, and I think there, we got to get away from scripts, right? And I call it a
Yeah.
race to the middle in the book, but a race to the middle is, and I'd actually, this is a muscle, right? Like a race to the middle is doing the research before meeting someone to understand where are those common passion points that you can dive in a little bit deeper to then create that genuine connection before we even get into the world of asks, right?
Mm.
And so I use in my speech, I use an example of I was out at Nike, and it's my most extreme example. And it was my first big speech at Nike. Have you been to Nike campus in Beaverton?
I haven't, no.
Well, you need maybe we could do something together there. So that
Yeah,
there's
you let me know.
accountability, right? Like I think it
Yep.
could be super fun,
Yeah.
and it's an amazing spot, right? And it was a huge deal for me because that was ultimately with my first book. My dream was to speak at Nike.
Yeah.
And so it was the morning before. It was 4:45 in the morning, kind of typical cold November rain. And I called an Uber. It was a 45-minute Uber ride to Nike campus and to get set up and everything. And me and my assistant go running into this Uber. It was a red Camry. And I hustle into the car and I slam it behind me. And I just like kind of was like, brr. And this Uber driver turns back at me and he goes, "How dare you treat my brand new Camry with disrespect?" And he just goes off on me because I slammed the door too hard. My assistant, knowing that I've got to be in a good headspace for the biggest speech of my career to date, whispers
Yeah.
in my ear, being like, "This isn't how we want to start. And this is going to be a long 45-minute ride." And I look around in that moment. I look around the Camry and this Uber driver's car, and I take visual cues of what's around me. And I see in his rear view mirror there's a Trinidad and Tobago flag hanging from that mirror. And I listen to the music for a second. I hear steel drum music, and I then go back to my assistant. I go, "Watch this." And I immediately chime in. I go, "Excuse me, sir, is that Trinidadian steel drum music? Because I am dying to get to this one kiteboarding spot in Trinidad that is right near the airport." And he goes, "So and so beach?" And his mentality totally changed, right?
Yeah.
And we spend the next 45 minutes talking about his upbringing in Trinidad, all the cool places to go. And we get out, he gives me a hug at Nike campus and gives me his digits to come visit him and his family when they're down there to try to coordinate my kiteboarding trip when he's down there. And it's not, that's what we're trying to practice with these relationships, right? It's
Yeah.
how do we actually find that common ground? And one of the quotes I use pretty often is, "Curiosity is the difference between networking and connecting," right? Because
Mm.
networking is very reciprocity driven. Connecting is actually when you go in with that intention being just genuine connection, right? Finding that common ground. It's actually when you ask those questions, when you take a genuine interest in them, that you're able to get enough data to then go deeper. So hopefully
Yeah, I
that's
love that, man. I'm just taking notes on it. I mean,
yeah.
curiosity is the difference between networking and connecting. And, just to your point, like I start every single interaction with basically any human being, either with a compliment or a commonality. A
Mm,
compliment is, I mean, it has to be genuine. But I think
mhm.
for you, I was even like, nice glasses. Like you got these really unique glasses. They're lime green. They got cool frames. I know it's part of your branding, but they're cool glasses. So I complimented them. And like the commonality, we talked right about, I think, kiteboarding. I was like, man, I want to, start kiteboarding more. It's like there's definitely something to leading with the compliment or a commonality first and foremost, building that rapport, and especially when you're networking, you see a lot of people who are just, hey, what do you do? Hey,
Mm,
what do what's your business? And it's like it's so generic and you can see right through it. There's typically, like, especially in LA, when I lived in LA, which was a nightmare, um that was so common there. It's like everyone has an angle. Like
mm,
everyone has an angle. And I just think it's really important to come with it, that true compliment or a commonality that can help bridge that gap. oh, you're from Ohio? Oh, go Buckeyes, right? Yeah, I've been to
Exactly.
the stadium. It's like just little things. Like I have a bank of memories of from whatever location. And even if it's so like I used to learn languages, how I was up to like 14 where I could say, hey, how are you in 14 different languages. And when anyone was even near that region, I was like, oh, Che Fach,
I
or
love
like
that.
Kakosi, it's like,
I started
anyway.
watching Sports Center on Sundays because if I didn't have anything else in common, I'm like, oh, like they don't grill, they don't kiteboard, they don't have kids. Like, oh,
Yeah,
how about the Braves last night? And then they they finally light up, and I'm like, oh, I
yeah.
watched the highlights. The other thing that I kind of forgot, like you think about our relationship that literally started last week, right? Also
Yeah.
using social media to take a vested interest in that person, right? Proactively.
Hmm.
And for
Yep.
me to actually start this conversation and say, dude, that fair you went to, obviously you're in Montana, but like that hang up, the pull up bar where you had to stay up there for like that was kind of impressive, right? Like I was kind of impressed by that, right? Like for me to start our conversation again by like, holy, Chris actually cared to not only connect with me on Instagram, but he's watching some of my reels and then participating in an ongoing way. And the first thing you respond, I think I just liked it, right? And you responded back like thumbs up, right? That
Yeah.
that is part of the process of Shawshanking, and we
Yeah.
have these tools all available to us, but we're using them in the wrong ways.
Yeah. That's the point right there too, is like, and specifically with social media, I distill it down to, are you a consumer or are you a producer on these platforms?
Mm,
And a producer too can mean I'm producing happiness by commenting on other people's posts,
mm,
by liking and being, you know, present. Like I think a lot of people, they'll just scroll aimlessly. One of the best things I did for my social media, Russell Brunson, buddy of mine, recommend doing it. He said, get rid of all your social media followings, everyone you follow, and just follow your dream 100, your dream 100 of the top 100 people in your network or outside of your network that speak to your perfect target avatar or could help speak to your perfect target avatar,
mm.
and see what they're doing and learn from them and use social media as a tool. And I did this for a while. Now I follow a lot more like friends that kind of fall outside that scope, but for a while that's all I used it for, was just like, hey, this is what this person's doing, this is a really great tool or messaging. And I just think, again, it's going back to being very deliberate with how you're interacting with people, not going straight for the ask, giving first and foremost. And Chris, I do want to mention your other book, The Millennial Whisperer, which was
Yeah.
a USA Today national bestseller. It crushed it. I want to just hear like some of the genesis of that book as well, and just if you could distill a
Yeah.
couple of takeaways for people who do work with millennials.
So let me put it into context of actually, I'm going to zoom out even further. So I hit rock bottom at age 36. All right. I hit rock bottom. I quickly realized things need to change. I have to change my metric of success from beating my brothers at the game of life. And that was a horrible metric of success. And I changed that to impact being made on a daily basis. I'm going to double down back with my wife and my two daughters. And I am going to really take my purpose to inspire and connect and go all in on my employees at my firm. That's what happened in that moment, which really played out over about 7 months. And I was on an executive retreat, similar to the retreats that you put on, but more
Mhm.
not nearly as cool. And I was around the fire, and I was introducing myself, and I was like, well, I don't know how to introduce myself because I'm not really a digital and social person, but I'm kind of like the millennial whisperer. And I go on and share my stories, and these guys, typical age, the average age being 50 years old, all entrepreneurs, they're like, man, tell me some of the stuff you do because I need help because these guys suck, right? Like, and I told them some of the tactics, and one of the guys leading it, a guy by the name of Tommy Breedlove, said, Chris, you gotta write that book. And that was the catalyst. So I wrote it in 4.5 months, worked with Vanderbilt to put together a lot of the data sources, etc. And the biggest things that happened, not just in that moment, was my currency quickly started to evolve from the digital and social person to the culture guy and the connection guy. And
Mm.
if you had Googled my name, for example, when I published the Millennial Whisperer, everything that came up was digital and social media. And now if you look me up, everything's around culture and connection and genuine connection and sales and all that, right? So I evolved my currency that was actually more in line with where my passions had come. And that's why I say everyone's got to have a side hustle. And my side hustle was writing this book that then ended up selling over 100,000 copies and kind of taking off. And the same thing happened with the pandemic. I'm like, I don't really want to talk about millennials forever. Like, what do I want to talk about now? Well, Savior asks, right? And so now that's where I'm spending a lot of my time. And so we're always reinventing ourselves through these very deliberate, incubated passions that we need to more deliberately go after. And so with the Millennial Whisper, and I still talk about it a lot, it's not that much different than Savior Asks in terms of, but it's inwardly focused, right? To our team members, we got to take a genuine interest in their lives. And just like the importance of developing relationships and following prospects on social media and Shawshanking them, you got to be doing the same thing with your people. I call it the art of the flyby, for example. So on a Monday, you either text or video message or, in person, if you're at the office, you say, Meg, that cat you adopted is so cute. Like, tell me more about it. You're taking a vested interest in their life, right? It's genuine connection. And so the big headlines and kind of like, the Instagrammable kind of like posts on it is from a corporate, like within your organization, the easiest thing that you can actually embrace is flexible work, right? And there's a lot of flexible work is more than just working from where you want to work. I use the example of a company out in California. I have the people guess what company it is, but on your 1-year anniversary, you're allowed to create your own job description with the caveat, you can do that job if you sell it into everyone else in your team. And I'm like, guess the corporation. And people were like, Uber, Twitter, Facebook. I said, no, Morningstar Tomato Farms. You know what the retention, and this is in their factory, they have a 99% retention rate, right? Wow. So that then gets into, from a leadership perspective, if you look at millennials, you look at Gen Zers, you look at the things that they want, it's what we all desire. And it's inspirational leadership, it's autonomy, and it's transparency. Even that flexible work is actually more of a category. It would fall into that autonomy. Just give people that autonomy as you're looking at more than just allowing people to work from where they want to work. And I can get into inspirational leadership, autonomy, or transparency as well. But those are the key characteristics that have changed.
Yeah. No, and I love those three, breaking it down: autonomy, inspirational leadership, and transparency. One other thing that I've seen a big trend is conscious capitalism, right? Like being very transparent, which falls into your transparency, but like there's so many more conscious consumers, the younger generation especially. And I have a company with my brother called Eco Breakthroughs that's fighting the plastic pollution epidemic. I don't think we've even talked about it much, but we have a really awesome process to upcycle plastic waste and to empower entrepreneurship in the process. And one of the things that we have done with that company is just be very transparent, getting B Corporation status and going through that whole process. And I think now millennials, Gen Zers, all these younger generations, they're very much interested in like, okay, the triple bottom line, essentially, people, planet, and the profits. And you really have to think about that as your own business, as a happy hustler, how are you focusing on the triple bottom line, not just like, ego and profits and success and status and most of the things that I was charging for with my first tech startup that I burn out from, and which led me on the journey to the happy hustle, which, that most of the listeners know my story. If you don't, welcome. This is probably one of your first shows. You picked a good one with Chris, let me tell you. But I will tell you, this is something where you have to have more than just money at the table of the conversation with these individuals. If you really want to speak to them, you have to think about the impact. You have to think about that triple bottom line, and giving them the autonomy, the inspirational leadership, and the transparency is all part of the process.
And the greatest difference between older millennials, which by the way are 40-year-olds, all right, to younger millennials, which are 24-year-olds, into Gen Zers, the biggest shift that we're seeing is that move to purpose, right? And purpose and profits,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, can
Yep.
go hand in hand, and standing for something bigger than just a bottom line. But then
Yeah.
I take it to the next level. And I think, one of the other big shifts and why a lot of millennials and Gen Zers are leaving their employers is this lack of genuine connection and this purpose and passion within their daily lives. And that, to me, the biggest takeaway I got after being very deep in this and working with the world's biggest and even small businesses, dentists, etc., is that the younger you get, the more of an expectation that passion and profession will overlap in one place along with purpose. And so what I do is I say, I actually, the role of leaders is to not just be a leader and tell people what to do. It's to be a mentor and a coach. And the best place to do that is help your people uncover their own purpose statements and then do something in your power. If that's not in their day-to-day job, then help them with a side hustle to go after that thing. And that's controversial. I was speaking at a place recently and they're like, so Chris, you're not allowed to talk about the side hustle thing. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to talk because I think it's one of the most important things. As long as it's not in competition with that organization that you guys, I think it's imperative that we all not only go out and pursue those, but that we scratch that itch with your passions within that. And so, I'm talking to some very large corporations about the idea of creating a program to identify purpose, individual purpose statements that then ladder up into your overall purpose statement as an organization, but then also fueling their innovation pipelines with some of those side hustles and things that actually scratch people's passions.
Oh, that's powerful. I mean, having a side hustle, like, and I think a lot of the happy hustlers can really resonate with this. You may be trading your time for money right now, doing something that really doesn't speak to your soul. That's not that fulfilling. And that's okay right now. Give yourself grace. But what Chris is talking about is creating a side hustle that gives you that optimistic, advantage every single day. When you get up, you wake up and what you have to do and then what you get to do, right? And you choose to really allocate your time and effort and resources to that side hustle, knowing that there will be one day a tipping point, hopefully, that you can do it full time. And speaking of a tipping point, Chris, this segues into, where you're at currently, which is really like this next generation of Chris. And I'm curious to kind of hear where you're at in this next evolution.
So I challenge everyone listening to identify their currency right now. All right. And your currency is that thing that you get paid to do. All right. And put it into context of my story or even your story. Like mine is, I was the digital and social guy, right? That created a national best-selling book that then allowed me to evolve into a new place. And that then became my currency, my new currency. Right. And a lot of people will ditch their currency too early in the process. And what I mean by that in application, a guy came to me, he was the COO of this massive consumer packaged good company out of Miami. He goes, Chris, I know you're friends with Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely. There is an opening at Spanx for a new recruiter job. I want to put my name in the hat for that. And I said, Blake, dude, you're the guy that figures out logistics for how to get 747s from China into all of the targets. Like, you can't, one, ditch your currency for something that you're not qualified for, that you think you'll like, one. And then two, I'm not going to waste my ask with Sarah to get you an interview for something that you're either overqualified or unqualified for. So instead, get into Spanx or one of these organizations through that same currency and then work laterally towards it once you're through those doors, because your family still depends on you to make to do this stuff, right? And listen, so put into context for me, I thought it, and how I wrote about it in Save Your Asks, I thought it would be so distinct, where it's that your side hustles are making more money than your main hustle, right? And it's not distinct. It is a gray zone that I don't operate well in because I'm black or white. And I then rely on ridiculous things happening to you to then be that catalyst. And one of my stories of the book, In Savior Asks, and my keynote is it revolves around this guy, Jason Trotwine, who introduced me to Raymana. And I told both of them that it was my dream to go to Kelly Slater Surf Ranch and surf with them. And it was 4 weeks ago that I got a call from Jason and said, Chris, it's happening. We're going out to Surf Ranch for this fundraiser and you're coming. And I mean, I wrote a blog post on it called Soul Wiggling. And soul wiggling are those moments. I didn't know what soul wiggling was until Grant Corrigan, who's this amazing individual, that's what the fundraiser at Surf Ranch was all about. He's this guy that was paralyzed at age 30 in a snowmobile accident and pushed himself across the South Pole on a sled with 2 poles all the way across it as he was recovering from this. And he's now the only paraplegic with his pilot's license, and he's created this foundation, and that's what it was for. And Jason was like, you're coming out, dude, and you're going to surf with Raymana and me at Surf Ranch. And it was the most pressure I've ever felt in my life catching that first wave. And I totally botch it, right? Because it's coming at 18 miles per hour, right?
Oh, man.
It's a minute and 15-second ride, and you only get 2 chances in the hour to do it. So it's under the lights. We have a day and a half of this, and I'm like, okay, if I botch the next one, I only have like 3 or 4 more chances. Like, what's going to happen? And that wave comes along, and I hear this familiar voice. Get low, now turn, get low. And it's Raymana next to me. I have tears rolling down my face as I catch the most epic ride. I'm in the barrel at the end, and I'm like, this stuff doesn't just happen. And I create this connection and bond with both Jason and Grant Corrigan there, that I come home and I turn to my wife and I was like, if I don't know what type of sign I need, but like, this is it. I need to go all in and take all of this stuff and go change the world. Because I feel like for the first time ever that I've got both the platform and the right people to do it with. And so I'm right in this amazing transition into going all in on changing the world and impacting it, and through really this framework of allowing people to save their asks and to more ruthlessly pursue your passions and the importance around that. And it's crazy because everywhere I go and speak, it's at the end of my speech that executive pulls me aside and they make sure that their team's not around. And they're like, so Chris, I have 0 passions in my job and I'm living an inauthentic life. Where do I start? I'm like, that's the real epidemic right now, are these people that get stuck on the golden treadmill of life. And
yeah,
I think that authenticity piece it's super important to me to practice what I preach. So you asked the question, I'm just now starting that transition into going absolutely all in on this stuff. And we'll see kind of how it unfolds, but obviously I'm pretty fired up. And
yeah, man.
Yeah,
I'm excited,
on, baby.
I'm excited for you, man. And I think, it's one of those things. Sure, we're coming out of this pandemic or whatnot, whatever anyone believes, that's on you. But I know there's an epidemic, and it's this burnout, like, grind culture, like glorifying working on the weekends. And, it's like, for me, that is what I got caught up in early on. And just to bring this all full circle, like, my passion was to really like help others avoid that burnout. That has literally been my mission. I planted my flag to solve the problem of imbalance. Imbalance is the problem. I will go to the grave saying balance equals happiness, because the more balanced I feel, the more happy I feel. And not just professionally, but personally as well, making sure that, and that's why I get into my 10 alignments framework, making sure I'm balanced in all of these different areas of life. And that's what you guys have to think about out there listening and watching, is right now, where are you settling? Where can you go all in? Like Chris is about to go all in, starting that side hustle and really just stepping into your full power, knowing that, YOLO, like, this life isn't guaranteed. I almost died recently from carbon monoxide poisoning. I don't know if you even know that, but it was in April. I was unconscious from a gas leak, and my dog saved my life. And that really put my whole life in perspective, man.
Mm.
Because I've flirted the edge of death multiple times, but this was one of those where like I was like minutes away from never waking up. And it's just it really it puts everything in perspective. And the point is, if you're out there right now, knowing you're settling, allow this to be the catalyst to
Mm.
change your trajectory. So now, Chris, I do want to ask you some of the traditional happy hustle questions. We went on a
Sure.
long
Yeah,
tangent. I
yeah,
love them.
yeah. I tend to
But
do that.
yeah, no, it's been amazing. But where can people go to learn more about you? Just initially, I'm like, I know they're going to want to get your books. Where can people go to pick up a copy of Save Your Asks and The Millennial Whisperer?
Yeah, so just go to Amazon, buy them on Amazon. I mean, if there's anyone out there that like can't pay for it, like I'll send you the PDF. Just get in touch with me. ChrisTuff.me is the best website. And then I'm really good on Instagram, Tuff22, TUFF22. And then also I'm very active and responsive on LinkedIn. And so I highly encourage people, go ahead and Shawshank me. I'm sure it'll work. But once again, my intentions are I want to help change the world. I want to unlock as many dreams as possible. And, looking at everything that the happy hustle and what Carrie you're building, it's so aligned and so needed. And so, yeah, I mean, hit me up. I'm ready to rock and roll, guys. I mean, those are the best places.
Yeah, love it. ChrisTuff.me. So now I do like to ask these they're called happy hustle hacks in a couple different disciplines. This is something short, sweet, to the point. It's a tip, a tool, a tactic, something that you do in a specific discipline. First being health. I know you're super fit, you're very active. What is the happy hustle hack in regards to health that you can share?
Yeah. So I highly encourage anyone that's trying to reset to do 75 hard. And what's funny for me, I don't drink anymore. That was one of the things that went out with my rock bottom. But I did 75 no ice cream, which was weirdly a challenge. But to watch how that has acted as a catalyst for a lot of my friend group and seeing life through like totally clear eyes, I highly encourage you to do something in that realm. I mean, for health and wellness is the most important thing to me, along with my family. And so I invest a lot of time and energy into being fit. And so I have a personal trainer. I hate working out at the gym. He holds me accountable. He makes me lift. And then I also make sure that I'm fueling my innate desire for kind of this experiential positivity and the stoke by kiteboarding and surfing and doing things that push me out of my comfort zone every quarter. And maybe it's going on your retreat in September, baby, right?
Yeah, I hope so, brother. That'd be
Yes.
awesome. And
Yes.
just to your point, like that 75 hard, I haven't done it. I was actually with Andy Frisella at Ed Milet's event. I was talking with him for a while, man. He was telling me like he didn't expect it to blow up like it did, but it's one of those things that has changed the lives of a lot of people, and it really is a great reset. So just make sure you're valuing your health and wellness, y'all. Now, I do want to ask you about money. I think money is a really important topic. It's a currency, right? It's a frequency. It makes you more of who you truly are, I believe, at least. But what would you say is a happy hustle hack in regards to money? Something that you do maybe to help save or invest or spend wisely that you could share with the happy hustlers?
So I'm always investing 3 years ahead of, it takes 3 years to build anything. Okay. So anyone that's happy hustling right now, give yourself some patience in seeing that through, because it's going to take you 3 years to actually effectively build and scale something. And I put into context, the first year is going to be kind of testing, dipping your toe in the water. The second year will be honing. And it's not until the third year, even with books, that you'll actually see the greatest return on that. So be patient in it, but always be investing in yourselves ahead of it. I have friends, they're like, so Chris, how much crypto do you own? I'm like, zero. Do you know why? Because the one thing I have no idea what's going to happen to Bitcoin price, but what I can control is me. So I'm always incubating side hustles on as I'm moving and going. really two at all times to diversify my future wealth and dependence on any salaried type position and moving away from that. So the other hack that I would add to that is that 20% of my time is to nonprofits. And I can give money to Vanderbilt or whatever, but it's not nearly as profound as me working within my currency and donating 20% of my time. I also, like my tattoo artist, Kiyoki, is one of my people that I take along. I helped him launch his own shop, and he's one of my projects, right? So I take 20% of all my time and I try to give that forward, which with each one of my exits. So I just did my 3-year vision this weekend. And so with each one of my exits, that percentage going towards that kind of altruistic helping people along will increase. So that will, with time, grow to be ultimately 100% of my time as I continue to have these exits.
I love that. I mean, as Tony Robbins says, the secret to living is giving, and I just officially joined a Rotary group.
So I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, I volunteer all the time with other things, but I like, my mom was a Rotarian, a bunch like my cousin, and, and I just think like giving your time is so much more valuable. It's your most precious commodity, and you can get money. I also like the concept of it's going to take 3 years. When you said that, I was like, oh man, the Happy Hustle. I started this podcast like November 2019. It's coming up on like, that time frame. And it's just now starting to I feel the momentum push, like the guests, the downloads, the traction, the traffic from it, my own stuff. You're right. I think 3 years is
and you can't
really
shortcut it.
Number.
I've got a couple celebrity friends, for example, right? Yeah. And they're like, I'm a celebrity. I can shortcut it. I'm like, no, 3-year rule. And sure enough, here they are, 2.5 years. They're like, Chris, you are right. You can't shortcut it. Like money, that for whatever reason, it's 3 years.
Yeah, no, I think, I think you're right on that. One other thing I like to ask about is spirituality. I just think it's important to have faith in something bigger than yourself. What would you say is a happy hustle hack in terms of spirituality? Maybe, I don't necessarily care one God or another. I think it's just more important that you take that time and get still and maybe practice meditation or breath work, something like that. What would you say is a happy hustle hack that you do in the spiritual realm?
So for me, as you can probably tell, I'm addicted to momentum. And I love connection. I never stop, which is very difficult for mindfulness, right? And so how I've incorporated mindfulness into my life is by what I call in-between moments. And in-between moments is a rebranding of this concept of garbage time. And garbage time was brought up by Jerry Seinfeld as what he talked about is that in connections with other human beings, whether it be with your kids, coworkers, or friends, the most profound moments that are happening in that connections are the least Instagrammable. All right. It's when you're, for example, with my daughter, it's when she's got milk coming down her face in the morning and she's eating her cereal and I'm kissing her on the forehead. Or we're playing 21 questions on the way to the farm and she's not on her device and she says something hilarious. Or being stuck with a coworker for 4 hours and you run out of shit to talk about. It's actually the in-between moments that are the most profound, right? Even in Surf Ranch, when I was out at Surf Ranch, it was the stoke, but so much more was me coming off of that stoke and sitting with Grant in the middle of, this, weird environment 100 miles from the ocean, just having had the best surfing experience of my life and the conversations that happen. And so I would challenge everyone, focus in on those in-between moments. And we have so much reliance to immediately go to filling those in-between moments with digital or giving our kids a device. Double down on those in-between moments, but also choreograph them. And I'm going to end it with this one last example of that, because I wrote a blog post on this and I just published it this week on my Substack, and I'll give you a link to that to link out to please. It. But there's a guy that is actually, if you listen to Savior Asks, he's the bonus material in it of me interviewing him. And he's the guy that wanted to punch me in the face. And he's an executive at Microsoft. And he went from in an audience as I was testing some of the concepts of Savior Asks. He went from the guy that literally wanted to punch me in the face to one of my closest confidants through the last year and a half. And so I sent him the blog post, and he texted me last night. Yesterday was my 42nd birthday, and he was like, "Happy birthday, Chris!
Oh,
I just
happy
want to
birthday, brother.
yeah, thanks, dude.
Jeez
Yeah,
Louise.
yeah." But he goes, I just want to let you know that you're having an impact on people's lives. And it was a picture of both his disgusting feet and his son's disgusting feet, and a picture of FIFA soccer. And he goes, "Chris, I'm having so many in between moments with my 12-year-old son right now, just, shit talking in FIFA and going back and forth. But I designed that in between moment by asking him to play FIFA tonight instead of, him going to a friend's house or whatever." And so that, to me, right, that's the thin place, right? That's where I get goosebumps, and where the joy and the spirituality of God, I believe in God, and off of that, like, that's where the magic happens. And so in a society that places only value on Instagrammable, where I've been, blah, 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 I challenge everyone to really double down, not only on that genuine connection, but also these in-between moments that are so fleeting and also amazing if we take the time to actually look at them that way.
Yeah. Oh, powerful, man. I love that. The in-between moments, and that's really where the magic is. So I love that. Be more aware, all you happy hustlers out there, of those in-between moments. And Chris, this has been amazing, man. I want to just put you through the rapid fire round, and we will wrap this interview up.
Yes.
This is basically where I just ask you random things and you answer honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Bring it on.
Okay. Favorite book? Go.
Prince of Tides, or the Almanac, Naval Ravikant.
Like it. Favorite food?
Asian.
Favorite movie?
Dead Poets Society.
Favorite workout?
Going for a kiteboarding session.
Nice. What's your spirit animal?
Probably a iguana.
Nice. Best business advice?
Double down on your passions and focus in on those dreams that you may have given up on a long time ago.
3 things you're most grateful for?
My wife and 2 children, my health, and being able to double down on the things that God gave me to make the world a better place, and actually calling that a job.
Love that. And if you had one piece of content for the world to see with your last piece of content that you'd ever create, what would that billboard read?
Probably the best is yet to come, with a call to action: make it happen.
Love it. Boom. Crush that rapid fire round,
Yeah,
Chris. And brother, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, man, for sharing your love, your light, your wisdom with myself and the happy hustlers, and just for being unapologetically you, and just, speaking to people's souls with both the Millennial Whisperer, Savior Ask, and all your messaging, and now stepping into this next, this next chapter in your life. I'm really excited to witness it, and grateful for you and our connection. So here to support you any way I can. I just appreciate you, man.
You too, dude. Right back at you.
Awesome. Now, where can people go to find out more about you? One more time, mention the links, the best place for people to connect, and then any other, final words before I ask you the last question.
Yeah. So it's Chris Tuff, TUFF.me. It's on Instagram at Tuff, TUFF22, or on LinkedIn. It's actually / Christopher Tuff.
Awesome. I love it. And final question: what does happy hustling mean to you, Chris?
Happy hustling to me is the backbone of really what it is that I'm trying to inspire more of, right? Which is that more people need to ruthlessly pursue their passions in life. And even if it's the thing that you weren't born to do, you can, with 10,000 hours of work, it can be that, but we've got to start pursuing it. We've got to. And that's why, I applaud everything that you're doing. It's just amazing and we need more of it. So let's scale this thing.
Love it. I'm all about it. Chris Tuff, y'all. Thanks for watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love.